The Barbary slave trade, spanning from the 16th to the 19th centuries, was a significant and brutal chapter in the history of slavery that has often been overshadowed by the transatlantic slave trade. This trade involved the capture and enslavement of European Christians by North African pirates, known as Barbary corsairs, who operated from the Barbary coast, a region encompassing present-day Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. The impact of the Barbary slave trade was profound, affecting hundreds of thousands of people and leaving a lasting legacy in European and North African history. The origins of the Barbary slave trade can be traced back to the political and economic landscape of the Mediterranean region in the late Middle Ages. The decline of the Byzantine Empire and the rise of the Ottoman Empire created a power vacuum in the Mediterranean, which the Barbary states exploited. These states, semi-autonomous provinces of the Ottoman Empire, developed economies heavily reliant on piracy and the slave trade. Barbary corsairs, sanctioned by their rulers, raided European coastal towns and ships, capturing men, women, and children. These captives were brought to North African slave markets, where they were sold into slavery. The primary motivation behind these raids was economic gain, although religious and political factors also played a role. The corsairs saw themselves as warriors of Islam, waging jihad against Christian Europe. The Barbary slave trade was a well-organized and lucrative enterprise. Corsairs utilized fast ships, such as galleys and xebecs, to launch surprise attacks on European vessels and coastal settlements. They often operated in large fleets, coordinated by powerful pirate leaders like the infamous Barbarossa brothers, Herein and herein, and later, figures like Marat Reis and the Dey of Algiers. Captured Europeans were taken to the slave markets of Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, and other cities along the Barbary coast. There, they were paraded before potential buyers and subjected to humiliating inspections. Slaves were categorized by age, gender, and skill set. Young, healthy men were often valued for their potential as laborers or oarsmen on pirate ships, while women and children were frequently sold into domestic servitude or concubinage. Life for Barbary slaves was harsh and brutal. Male slaves were often put to work in quarries, fields, or construction projects under grueling conditions. Many were used as galley slaves, forced to row under the threat of the lash. This work was exceptionally perilous, with high mortality rates due to exhaustion, malnutrition, and disease. Female slaves faced a different but equally grim fate. Many were forced into domestic labor, serving as maids, cooks, or laundresses in wealthy households. Others were consigned to harems, where they became concubines for their Muslim masters. The sexual exploitation of female slaves was a common and devastating aspect of their captivity. Despite the brutality, some captives found ways to endure and even resist. There are accounts of slaves who converted to Islam to gain better treatment or to escape enslavement altogether. Some managed to escape and return to their homelands, while others were ransomed by relatives or religious organizations dedicated to freeing Christian captives. The Barbary slave trade had a profound impact on Europe, instilling fear and resentment across the continent. Coastal communities, particularly in Spain, Italy, France, and even as far north as Iceland, were vulnerable to sudden raids. These attacks disrupted local economies, depopulated villages, and created a pervasive sense of insecurity. European powers responded to the threat in various ways. Some, like Spain and Portugal, launched military campaigns against the Barbary states, capturing key cities like Tunis and Algiers at different points in history. Others paid tribute to Barbary rulers to avoid attacks on their shipping and coastal settlements. This practice of paying tribute was controversial and often seen as humiliating, but it provided temporary protection for merchant vessels. Religious and humanitarian organizations, such as the Trinitarians and the Mercedarians, played a crucial role in ransoming captives. These orders collected donations and negotiated with Barbary rulers to secure the release of Christian slaves. This practice underscored the deep religious and cultural divide between Christian Europe and Muslim North Africa, even as it fostered occasional moments of cooperation. The decline of the Barbary slave trade began in the late 18th century and continued into the 19th century, driven by several factors. The rise of powerful European navies, particularly those of Britain and France, made it increasingly difficult for Barbary corsairs to operate with impunity. Naval blockades, bombardments of key pirate strongholds, and decisive battles, such as the bombardment of Algiers in 1816, weakened the Barbary state's capacity for piracy and slave trading. Moreover, the growing international abolitionist movement put pressure on European governments to combat slavery in all its forms. The United States, newly independent and determined to protect its maritime interests, also took a firm stand against Barbary piracy. The Barbary Wars, 1801 to 1805 and 1815, saw the young American Navy engage in military action against the Barbary states, ultimately securing peace treaties that ended the payment of tribute and reduced the threat to American shipping. By the mid-19th century, the combined efforts of European and American forces, along with internal political changes within the Barbary states, effectively brought an end to the Barbary slave trade. The abolition of slavery in European colonies and the pressure on Muslim rulers to conform to international norms further eroded the practice. The legacy of the Barbary slave trade is complex and multifaceted. For the descendants of those captured and enslaved, it remains a painful reminder of a brutal past. The trade also left a lasting impact on the Mediterranean region, shaping the relations between Europe and North Africa for centuries. In popular culture and historical memory, the Barbary corsairs have often been romanticized as swashbuckling pirates, while the grim realities of slavery are sometimes overlooked. However, recent scholarship has sought to highlight the human cost of the Barbary slave trade and its role in the broader history of slavery and human exploitation.